7:01.
Is he ready?
Yeah, Paul, take your time. Whatever Paul needs.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 7:01 Finance Committee meeting. Paul, glad you could be here.
Thank you. A lot of traffic out there.
Rodney, whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. So tonight and Wednesday night will be our warrant review. Tonight we'll be doing citizens petitions and anything non-capital. Here's just where we are in the process. I realize this is probably just a selfish slide for me to see the progress I'm making as I get through these 2 months, but
We're very proud of what
yeah,
you've
thank you. But we're almost there. We're almost at the finish line.
Would you like to do it again for us next year?
Well, hopefully not, but no. We'll start off with the 3 citizens petitions, 36, 37, 38, related to zoning. And I'll defer to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I believe we're going to take Article 38 first. Mr. Morose?
Howdy, Jim Rose, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3, and citizens petition to see if the town will vote to rescind the 3A MBTA zoning changes made by prior approved warrant articles 8, 9 of the 2/5/24 special town meeting, warrant articles 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 of the 11/15/21 special town meeting, and warrant articles 5 of the 2/10 special town meeting. Take any action thereof. And now that I've read that all, when I submitted this, I had no idea, and the planning board reminded me that in order to make these changes, you have to have public notice of meetings and everything else. So it was pretty much impossible to meet those deadlines, so we just respectfully request that this just be passed, no action.
Thank you. Given that you're now requesting that this be a motion of no action, is there any question from the committee? Any question from the audience specifically on Article 38? Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion of no action?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Do you want to do 37 or 36 next, Jim?
We'll do 36.
All right, 36, the petitioner is Mark Zubrick. He had somewhere to be tonight, and so Jim is asked to present. So Jim, go ahead.
Okay, Article 36, citizen petition to repeal of zoning, to see if the town meeting will vote to direct the town to prepare the necessary articles and meet all other requirements to repeal zoning change adopted to comply with the MBTA mandate or take any action thereon. Okay, so this petition seeks to return our community to the traditional zoning and character of our town. So the intent of this is to back out the MBTA zoning articles that Danvers passed, so we can get back to a level set, and then hopefully implement zoning that more reflects Danvers. This one size fits all is a little overbearing, and it's a one size fits all that just doesn't quite fit the character of Danvers. I mean, again, and the whole theme through this is increased density with decreased parking. It's just a recipe for disaster, and that's all I have to say about it. If anybody has any questions.
Questions from Mr. Morose? Wally?
So, do I have this correct, right? This is already a state law,
That's right.
and we've already voted it in. So, to change this or to accept this, we're going to...
Just make sure you're using the microphone.
We're going to ask town meeting to break the law.
That's right.
Okay. I can't see any sense in that, so I'm done.
Okay. Ted?
What exact articles are you referring to when you talk about the MBTA mandate? As far as I recollect, the only time that, and I could be wrong, the only time that zoning was done in adjusted to fit the MBTA requirements was last year. And there was other rezoning of the downtown that I think you refer to in Article 38 in prior years. But again, to the best of my recollection, none of that rezoning was in light of the MBTA zoning laws. And through you, Mr. Chair, if I might ask,
Yeah, I was,
maybe Aaron to,
if the planning director
clarify
could, Land Use and Community Services Director, excuse me, could just address that. Could you just give us a brief timeline of the specific MBTA mandate zoning that the town addressed? I agree. My recollection is we did it once.
Yeah, strictly speaking, Mr. Blake's assertion is correct. As we were developing the mixed-use zoning for downtown, we were aware that the legislature was working on what became the MBTA Communities Act, but that process and the calibration of exactly what we wanted to do in that district was really kind of done as an aside through the planning board and the outreach work that the board and the staff were doing. Once the law was adopted, we felt the zoning as it existed at that time was compliant. DHCD, now the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, then promulgated regulations, which the SJC decision subsequently ruled out of procedure, had a procedural flaw in the adoption of those regs, which were then corrected procedurally. But when those regs came out initially, it was determined that we failed to comply with 2 criteria of the regulations, and therefore we had to return to town meeting last spring to make those minor adjustments, a minimum density and a minimum parking requirement.
Thank you, Aaron.
So I guess I get that some people might not like the law, the state law. I'm not sure that I love it either. How much effort have you done lobbying our state legislature and state senator on that issue? Like, the best remedy I can see is having that law, getting that law amended, because I'm aware it's not terrifically popular in many parts of Massachusetts, perhaps including Danvers.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have sent several letters to Senator Lovely and Representative Kearns about this and several other laws of one size fits all, but yeah, and so I've done that, but to no avail. And again, the only reason that we're doing this is because other towns have started to push back. So, I mean, Mr. Tybert asked about, you're asking us to break the law. I'm just asking to push back. We need to start pushing back when the state keeps pushing all these laws, one size fits all. Today, it's MBTA zoning, and now backing up on this is ADUs. And the intent of this is very clear. They want to get rid of single-family homes. I mean, this used to be a rural town, and so people moved from the city to the rural areas, and now all of a sudden, and that's some of the feedback we're getting from the residents is that I moved here to get away from this, and now it's just coming here. So when do we start pushing back? That's the question. That's what these petitions are all about.
Okay. I think that's all the questions for me.
No questions.
Mike?
So on a couple of things with Jim. I mean, first of all, this concept that people have that what we're dealing with now is somehow a substantial and remarkable change to the nature of this community is just simply not true. And it's not true because it fails to recognize the fact that those changes occurred, in some cases, 150 years ago. Danvers in 1950 was not a rural community. There was a very substantial portion of Danvers that was rural. It was really rural. There was like 500 people who lived in most of Danvers. But if you lived in the area of Danvers where most people lived, basically the port, the plains, Tapleyville, and the square, that was a much more urban environment than what any of us think Danvers is right now. That was an environment in which you had substantial amounts of really serious industries, leather industries, coal depots, fluorescent light manufacturers, all in that part of the community where those 12,000 people lived. There was 2,500 people who lived at the state hospital, and there was literally like 500 people that lived in the rest of the town, and that was really rural. I agree with that. My old man told me stories about it. What I can remember from 1973, that had already changed. Danvers had doubled its population, had 26,000 people in it. We still had a fluorescent light manufacturer on Sylvan Street. I don't know if anybody in this room remembers what it was like to drive on either Sylvan Street or Pine Street when they were letting out one of their 3 shifts, but you weren't getting from point A to point B during that period of time. There was 400 kids that were downtown. We had double sessions in our high school. That change that occurred from 1955 to 1975 absolutely dramatically changed the way the town is. But what's happened since then, quite frankly, is really incremental in regards to small amounts. I don't disagree that things have changed. I don't disagree that when somebody has the opportunity to find a 2-family and turn it into a 3-family, or a 3-family and turn it into a 4-family, or take their 6 acres and put 4 houses on it, they do it. And they've been doing that for the last 70 years, and no more now or over the last 15 years than they were doing it in the 70s, quite frankly, at this point. So this idea that Danvers is in the midst of some type of dramatic change just flies in the face of facts. Sometimes I like facts. I've sort of lived with them. The other problem with this article, which is, as we've talked about ad nauseum, I don't know what he plans to do with it. And I'm glad he's not here because I won't yell at him, but it's confusing. You tell me what his intent is. Laws have to have language that is understandable and definitive. This is not. Who is going to do this? Who does he think town meeting has the authority to tell to do anything, quite honestly, when it comes to this stuff? So when we're dealing with these things, even if I agreed, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, we've said this about the fact that the state pushes communities quite a bit when it comes to these things. Again, not a new thing. Remember, the reason we have swing-away golf is because of 40B, right? The reason, the 2 biggest changes that we've had within this community over the last 20 years, the state hospital, is because we were frankly stupid, pardon my language, and didn't zone that to be another Cummings Park, and we thought it would be really great to put 500 residential units up there, right? You want to know who that was? The guy who did this article was behind that. It wasn't me, right? So I always get a kick of the change that people have when they look back at the prism of history with it. But in terms of these types of things, again, we are a municipal corporation created by the state. I'm going to say this to everybody because they've probably heard it from me before. If you want to know how little authority we as a municipality, a municipal corporation, have over our big brother that is the state, take a ride down Route 2, take a left turn, you'll see the Quabbin Reservoir, and you'll see the 4 communities in Massachusetts that no longer exist because the state ended them so Boston could have water. So this idea that the state can't force upon I don't like it. The option for you guys, if you really don't want this, is do it, not a referendum in Danvers. Get out in front of Market Basket, get the signatures, and do a referendum against this on the state level. It works. Seen it happen before. But this is, again, it's just craziness in terms of thinking that we're going to bang our head in locally and it's not going to make it bleed if we do this. So.
Is there a question in there?
No, that was all statements.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything.
No, I didn't know.
Could I just?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I mean, there was a lot of information to pack on it. The only thing I want to address is, yeah, you are correct when it comes to people taking the single-family houses, turning them into double, two families, three families, whatever they're zoned for, and that's fine. But what we're talking here is density of, 24 per acre, 36 per acre. So it's a little bit different than a three-family, four-family house. That's all I'm saying. And again, other towns and cities are pushing back, and that's, again, why we started this. And there are a lot of citizens that are highly concerned, and you're right. We need to get on some bandwagon, so eventually we will. And it's just not, again, it's just not this, it's the ADUs are even gonna, add insult to this injury. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, if I could, Mr. Chair, I don't, again, Jim, I think I understand exactly what you're saying with it, and, there is a case. That case still exists, as I had said to you. I don't think anybody in their right mind should believe that the case that involves it as an unfunded mandate is a backdoor to be able to undermine the legitimacy of this action. The SJC made it perfectly clear that you must adhere to this, and that if you don't adhere to this, the Attorney General has an absolute right to be able to make you adhere to it. And this Attorney General is clear that she is going to make people adhere to it. That being said, my guess is, if you wanted to bet me, that they probably will come back with a determination that there is some unfunded mandate component of this. And what will end up happening with it is that we will be refunded some amount on our cherry sheet, like we are another state implied 40 whatever, 40B, 40C, 40D, 40E, 40F, all those different things. We'll get a refund back on that with it. But again, the idea that mechanism, the mechanism that's being proposed here, which is in essence to either sue the state or to take an action that is highly unlikely that the Attorney General, who has to approve all these, is going to approve in the first place, it just isn't going to happen in regards to it. And that's why I say is I think the effort needs to be at the state level if you want to be able to sort of pull this back. It's very much a regional thing. I mean, again, development is, zoning is really dangerous, first of all, okay? If you do it wrong, you really screw things up badly. And we have David McKenna will remind everybody about the David McKenna Tower on Route 114, 13 stories, which was really well-intentioned, what we wanted to do at that time. But you gotta, they have lawyers too. And sometimes they're better than ours, and they do a really good job with that. So I think that's the other part of this is that if we want to really look at zoning and change zoning, let's do it in a professional, sort of metered fashion. If you're going to do something with this, let's get together. Let's have people who understand it from the planning board, from the Board of Appeals. Let them be able to come in with recommendations in regards to these types of things, and move forward with it and do it on the local level that way. Referendum, don't have a problem with referendum in general. Referendums for zoning are really, really dangerous.
Thank you for the feedback, but one thing that I thought was kind of funny was the last planning board, I think someone who owns Glitterati, they did an A&R so that they could freeze the zoning as it is today, which is...
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what, not for like 2-3 years. And as you know, you can take advantage, usually pick and choose. So you get the best of either one, which is why we have the tower. There was no height requirements for residential, whereas there is for business. Again, and I understand I'm wasting people's time to some extent, but one of the things that people really need to respect is that the first committee I ever served on, and I think Dave might have been with it, it was the 114 corridor zone. And at one of the meetings, Tom Flatley was probably the biggest developer in Massachusetts at one point. Tom Flatley happened to come to our meeting, and I was maybe 20 years old. I was a moronic kid. And I'm sure I said something moronic to Tom Flatley. And Flatley sort of looked at me and he said, the problem is this. When you become too limited in what you're going to be able to, what someone can do with their property, And of course, he was one of those people who said, by the way, it's my property. I own the property. You are restricting my right to use my property, right? It's always interesting to me that the most Republican people in Danvers, who generally I would say are the people who really, really fancy property rights, don't really go that way when it comes to the people who live next door to him. But it was his property. And the other thing that he made the point to me was, if you limit what I can do with that property too much, I'm going to find an alternative to screw you over. And that's swing away golf. And that is other places in Danvers where it's the tower on Route 114. You got to give them some opportunity to be able to use their property in a good way. You just can't stop everything that you think is bad. I won't say anything else the rest of the night.
Doubt it.
I doubt that.
Broken
Anyone
promises.
want to make a bet on that?
I move.
Eric?
Well, I would say that, Mike, I appreciate the history lesson because I think it's helpful to get context. When I read the petitions, I haven't been in Danvers for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, so it's unclear to me what character of our town means. It's very vague, and it's subjective to what everybody thinks themselves. I think the character should be X, Y, or Z. So then we have laws that define it, and then there's a very ambiguous pushback. Since I work in multiple towns on the North Shore, and so I do hear some of this chatter. Gloucester just passed a yes on 3, this week. And so I think it's important that we hear from residents because there's a lot of vexation around 3A. But I'm not completely clear on what folks want. Like, it's not clear to me. So when I look down 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future, and I say, well, what is it that folks want in the future? And if the answer is we want in the future what we had in the past, it doesn't make sense to me. Because the price of a single-family home today will kill your town. It will, absolutely, and we talk about that, right? So you can't buy a single-family home anywhere for less than, $750,000, $800,000 or some wild number like that. If our community or any community that has home ownership prices at that level, seniors can't age in place because they can't afford to maintain those big 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom ranches with property, and a family who's got, one child doesn't need a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, or 2 working parents still can't afford $800,000 for a home to do anything. It doesn't really add up to me how our community thrives if we say we want to plant a stake in the ground, freeze, keep the community as it is today. I think, okay, that's fine. No one's going to move here unless we want folks who only have millions of dollars and no children, and then we die out. Because no one with children is going to come and buy into our town. So I think it's there is an answer to what folks are feeling, and these are not the answers. These are emotional responses to, we want to preserve something, but what we're preserving does not create a future for us. I mean, it's very concerning. You can't buy a condo for less than $600,000. So I do think that I hear the concern. I don't believe that this going backward and pushing against this provides any future for our town, like none. When I see this, I see the death of communities because no one can move there. No one can move there. Population decline. Oh, now your tax revenues are down because no one's moving there. Why? Because they can't afford it. Why? Because folks pushed back on 3A back in 2025 because they didn't like the changing demographic of the town. Okay, keep the demographic you have. We have an aging population. We need new families to come, and they can't afford to come unless there's something for them to afford. So I think there's some healthy conversations to be had around that from passionate people who want our community to exist. We can agree there. How we go about it has to be, I think, more nuanced than to have or not to have this particular zoning law. It is law. Working within that, I think we can do better. But at this level, we're not controlling the things that we control well enough, and this is just emotional responses to things and say, well, I don't really like it, want to do it. I don't think this is the answer. But I appreciate and respect members of our community are trying to say that something is not sitting well, let's do something about it. I hear that, and I think this doesn't do it, but we should figure that out, because it's not going away. Folks are just upset. But I appreciate the communication. Thank you.
All set, Jim? Paul?
I'd be disingenuous if I told you I had anything to add to what's been said. I came into this town in, I was going to say 1841.
And no one would have corrected you.
Just as the railroads were really getting in.
Yeah, a lot of coal around at that point. But no, I came here in, 1981. And so I've had 40-plus years, and you're not going to go back. I mean, basically, we're not going back. Not going to happen, never will, and, we're not going to be like we were in the 50s or the 60s, thank goodness, and all that. So everybody said what I think I could say. I think we're here, we're going to move on, and I'm finished. Thank you.
I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think it's relatively obvious of what's going to happen with this particular article, but just out of I'm looking at this, and again, I understand, Jim, where you're coming from on this, and where some people are coming from on this, but I start with a question. I don't know if we've asked our town council this or not, but can town meeting repeal?
I think the answer to that question is we can certainly pass the article, but then when it appears on the desk of the Attorney General, she'll laugh at it and send it back and say, this is not acceptable.
But then if we repeal, do we just automatically go back to the zoning that was in place before?
The quick answer to that is no, we just eliminate
So
zoning.
now we have no zoning, basically.
I think, and Aaron, if you want to address that more articulately than I can, as I'm not any kind of attorney or,
Yeah.
but just if you could touch on, in theory, if this article or any similar article, for the sake of conversation, so you might not have to get up again in 5 minutes, were to pass, can you talk about what I'll describe as unintended consequences of repealing zoning?
Well, again, you run the risk of potentially having no zoning in place if you rescind, and I know that's very unusual and kind of seems counterintuitive. That said, in a prior community that I had worked in, we had a judge invalidate the zoning in question on a specific parcel, and our response was, well, what is it now? And the answer was, it is unzoned. Now, fortunately, the land in question was abutting a reservoir and had enough protection because of it abutting the reservoir that the community was able to pivot and deal with that before the landowner had no intentions of doing something. But it can happen that you can have unzoned property. Not a good situation. Anything goes. There is no book. There are no rules. You may do whatever you wish. Height limits, all that. So I did want to address.
Let me know if that happens, because.
Yeah. But I wanted to address the question about have we talked to town council. I think the short answer of that is we have inquired to town council about what would happen if this were to occur. A couple weeks ago, our town clerk, Kathy Ellsworth, held in this room a regional training where the Attorney General's office came here to talk to town clerks about bylaw changes, zoning changes, and how to file the paperwork that goes along with those. Just kind of a refresher. It was actually quite nice to see this room full of other town clerks. But we did have a chance to pigeonhole the AG staff that was here, and we put that question to them. They followed up with us in writing, but we have not received a response. Basically, the question was, if the town properly adopted this zoning change that rescinded this zoning, what would the Attorney General's response be? We do not have an answer to that question yet, and I'm not sure that they will take a position, but they have the right to deny that zoning change even if it were properly adopted.
Right.
Aaron, while you're up there, if, I don't know that we could rescind it, so based on what you're saying, but if we didn't have the zoning, are we losing funds? Are we losing money from the state?
I would say in the last couple of years, we have not tried to tap into any of the programs that the state has put under this umbrella. Compliant communities may only apply for these programs, but the most obvious and recent project that would have not occurred is the rail trail extension. That was a MassWorks project, and the MassWorks program is, I think they call it One Stop. I'm forgetting the overarching umbrella that they've put, the Community One Stop. There are a number of grants under that umbrella that, again, I wouldn't say we use them annually, but we are regularly following them, and we have projects in our mind that are like, okay, when we're ready, that would be one. Open space acquisition, land and park program. There are programs out there that we intend to and we have in the past, but at the moment, I don't think there's anything like in the next 6 weeks that we're trying to do, but we certainly have tapped into those in the past.
Thanks, Aaron. So, Jim, one of the things you said earlier was essentially get rid of it and then come back with some other kind of zoning, but I think that's the reverse of how it has to happen. If there's going to be replacement zoning, the replacement zoning has to be what repeals the prior zoning. We can't just have a no zoning outlaw city situation. So I don't think it works. And I also agree with Ted and Mike, I think, which when they said it's kind of a state issue. It's a referendum issue. It's a you got to work on this from their end of it, not from our end of it. And I don't think anything comes of it from our end of it other than we're spinning our wheels for nothing. So that's all. I don't want to, again, it's been talked about pretty lengthy at this point, so I'll leave it at that. And, but.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments and your feedback, and again, it's just to make a statement. And I mean, I've been in litigation when there's 5 lawyers, and everyone's got an opinion, right? No one agrees. I mean, to me, the smell test, if you're gonna back out zoning, then whatever zoning existed before you back out that zoning, it still exists. So
I don't think it does, though. It's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, that litigation you had 5 lawyers that you're talking about? It had 1 lawyer who did matter. And that was the judge. And the judges have spoken on this. And that's part of the problem with this is, and so, as I've said to people all along, I agree with you. You know what? I happen to think my lawyerly opinion might be worth more than other people's, but that's because I'm selfish and conceited. But the reality of it is that
This is on tape for Anne's sake.
But the reality is that there are decisions, there are judicial decisions on both specifically on this, but unquestionably as it relates to zoning. It is trust me, there's a really big book of zoning law that it's not disagreement. They don't do the laws with disagreements and opinions. They tell you how to do it. And this stuff is pretty well established. I don't think there's any question, frankly, that no, our zoning bylaw is what our zoning bylaw is. It's there. If you take a piece out of that zoning bylaw, there's nothing else that just automatically replaces it unless there is a state statute, an underlying state statute that provides some protection to people. But again, these are people's property and you're taking away their rights to use their property. So they have a lot of opportunities to be able to take care of that, because if not, it's eminent domain, it's an unfair taking, right? There's that Constitution thing that talks about what they have rights about, so.
Okay, any questions from the audience? David?
You all be up there, I guess.
Please, yeah. Just so those little old ladies on 114 who are watching can still hear you. We miss.
Love you like they were your.
We do miss getting phone calls from her. They need to speak more into the microphone.
David McKenna, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. Yes, Danvers is changing. We all know that. I know it probably more than any of you. I grew up in West Danvers off Buxton Road. Our nearest neighbor was a quarter mile away. You couldn't see any other houses. It's changed a lot in the last 30 years from those days. It's changed everywhere. And unfortunately, it's going to keep changing because there are more people coming along that want housing. Your children are going to want housing, your grandchildren. People from out of town want to move in because it's a great community. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to try to change this. As been said, we have no zoning in place. We have a hole there that would probably cause more problems. For us to start and get into a legal battle when there's so many others already doing it, let them spend the money. Why should we waste ours? If they prevail, that law will go away and then we'll figure something else out. And one last comment, that tower should never have been there because while the A&R zoning did provide that it protected the landowner's interests and their rights, it was never supposed to give them more rights than they would have had under the old zoning. They still should have had a 3-story height limit, even though there was no residential height limit imposed. We didn't know that in time to stop it, but it should have been stopped. I don't think this should go through. I think we got to play this out and let the chips fall where they may with the other communities fighting it, and maybe it'll prevail. There were a lot of hearings went into what was proposed downtown. Probably 30 or more hearings over a 5-year period. I remember being downtown, putting little stickers on a map. I don't remember exactly what the purpose was, but the citizens had plenty of input into that. We tried to make the downtown more vibrant by giving it mixed use with neighborhood input. It wasn't something town hall jammed down everybody's throat. It was something that the neighborhoods and all the citizens had a chance to and did speak on for, had to be at least 5 years. So I think we need to give it a chance. I agree that building is big. We'll have some more big ones, but it's going to have to work one way or the other. This is not the way, I don't think. Thank you.
Thank you, David. David, you dropped something just behind you. Go ahead.
Get a free piece of gum.
Nova Yosemite Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I just wanted to stand up in support of the MBTA zoning. I think it's a great zoning. I would love to see more residential availability in town, especially downtown. I am not afraid of the empty Jimmy's roast beef that's been empty for years at this point being replaced with something 4 stories and has like maybe 10 units of residential. This is not anything to be afraid of. It's exciting. Yes, it is changing. I did not live here in the 50s or the 70s, and I don't want it to stay the same. And this is not a small town. I grew up in a small town. There was less than 1,000 of us. That is a small town. 27,000 is not a small town. And I think if we embrace this as a positive thing, it could be good for us. It's nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Nova. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. Joanne Bagucci, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. Changed my remarks a little bit after listening to the board and got some nice history. I'm a 25-year resident of Danvers and grew up in Beverly, right next door. So I was in Danvers a lot and do remember a lot of the industry in Danvers, the Sylvania plants. My dad was a Sylvania worker, as were many of our dads and moms. But one of the reasons why I ran for town meeting a couple of years ago was, yeah, there is some changes in town that, maybe I didn't particularly like. And as I was talking to residents in my precinct, one of the things that constantly rose to the top was overdevelopment, development. And I think what residents mean is the walls closing in on them, the town becoming more dense. A lot of residents and new families that have moved to Danvers in maybe the past 20, 25 years moved out of the urban settings of maybe closer to Boston, Revere, Saugus, something like that. And they came here. And one resident in my precinct in particular, I was having a conversation with, and he said, you know, I came here from another community, it was more urban, we came here to Danvers, we liked it, it was more suburban for our family, and we really thought that the town was looking out for our best interests. And he says, 20 years later, I see all this development happening, and I know it's pushed a lot by the state, and I understand both sides of it. But he goes, I don't think that anymore. He says, I wish I was more awake 20 years ago. And that kind of has stayed with me the last couple of years that I've been on town meeting, is that I think a lot of residents feel that way. And, you know, we all have resident input, but there is a majority of the residents that don't have time to come to meetings. They have families, they have other obligations, they have jobs just to survive, you know. And I think, you know, I'm not going to preach to anybody, but I think one of the reasons I take what I do kind of seriously, even though it is volunteering, is that we need to really listen to the residents. And even as town meeting members and as volunteers in the town, is sometimes not vote for what we think is best, but really get the input of our constituents in each one of our precincts or in the town and what they want. And a lot of them are very afraid of the overdevelopment. They don't want, you know, their walls closed in. They moved out of an urban setting. They want this to remain suburban. So I think that's the crossroads that Danvers is at. Whether, you know, Jim and a lot of the group, they've worked really hard on these articles and to try, and I understand the legalities of it, but I hope that this really starts a conversation in town, a huge conversation in town, and to let the residents know that we see it, we hear you, and we're going to work on this, and we're going to make it better. Because people are afraid this is going to happen to the town. They don't like it. They don't like what they're seeing. So I hope we all can work together, and I hope it started a big conversation through this whole process. I don't want to see it go away. There was one other remark that I know they asked Jim about, have we, you know, at the state level, tried to lobby our representative and our state senator? I've mentioned it in conversation when I have been able to speak to them, and, you know, we really don't get a stance. It's, well, we need more housing, and that's really it. And it's sort of, everyone's kind of in lockstep with what the state wants to do. So I do agree that it is a trickle-down effect. It is from the state. Some of this is from the federal level. You know, people aren't selling their homes. Interest rates are high. They're going to add on to the home. You know, so there's a lot of things. But I just hope that we can continue to have a really positive conversation. And I see Dan Bennett's here tonight. Ronnie's here tonight. I know acting town manager. But when the town manager comes in, Danvers really needs to sit down and say, okay, we got to be very careful here where we go. Because it could become Rantoul Street in Beverly, and everyone laughs at that, oh, don't bring up Beverly. Beverly now is on a water restriction, and they say, oh, it's because of the drought. I grew up in Beverly. We never had a water restriction. Beverly's overbuilt. And the town just went through Trask Lane covenant that the town let expire. And now they're going to build another 400 apartments on Folly Hill and more. So that's going to impact our town. That's going to impact our residents. That's going to impact the investment that people put into their homes to live there. And the town really needs to think about this, and everybody does. You know, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Nice job. Anyone else? Yes. Noah.
Hi, my name is Noah Levitt. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 7. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts. Like Nova, I'm in favor of the MBTA zoning. We have a housing crisis in the state, in this town. Is it a perfect solution? No, but I think it's a step in the right direction to build the high-density housing that we need. I also just want to speak as someone who's a new resident to town. I moved here in 2020. I want a town that is moving forward, that there is progress. Density is not bad. Density is good. One of the reasons we moved here was because we can walk a half mile downtown and have coffee shops, restaurants, businesses. We see our neighbors. I feel like there's a fabric in this town. You know, people talk about character and losing the character, and I always wonder what that means. Because to me, the character is seeing my neighbors, going downtown, knowing the person at the coffee shop. I don't know, that feels pretty great to me. I like how that feels. I'm concerned that there's a sentiment that I hear from folks that the town is closed and we only want a certain type of resident here when people talk about character and demographics in Article 37. We should want a town that welcomes everyone. We should want a town that, as other members have said, that is moving forward, that is open to new families. Not everyone can afford a single family home. So I just think it's, you know, it's important that when we hear folks saying everyone's opposed to this or everyone's opposed to that, that there really aren't. I moved here because I like the direction this town's going in. I ran for town meeting. I'm running for library trustee because I want this town to move in a positive direction. So I just, you know, I think that if folks are really opposed to this, sure, fight it on the state level. But I think those are different conversations too. I think that folks are pining for a Danvers that maybe existed in the early 1900s. I don't think it's existed recently. And I think it's disingenuous to say everyone's opposed to this because there are many of us who moved here because we like the direction this town is going in. Since Maple Square started, look at what's happened downtown. We have a new coffee shop. We have the Modern Butcher. There's lines down the street every Saturday morning. Like, I don't know, that's a positive development to me. So I just wanted to not just speak in favor of the zoning, the MBTA zoning, but just speak in favor of the direction of this town. Like, it's a place that I'm proud to live in, and I want other people to be able to live here as well. And that to me makes Danvers feel like home. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there a motion?
Move no action.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Jim, once again, the submitting petitioner is not here, and you're up.
Article 37, Citizens Petition MBTA zoning, and basically this is to see if the town will vote to have the planning department discuss and incorporate zoning bylaw updates to specifically address the overdevelopment created by the MBTA zoning requirements of increased unit density and decreased parking requirements during the 2025-2026 normal zoning review and update public meetings or take any other action thereof. So basically, this is just a kinder, gentler version of addressing MBTA zoning. I think that, the MBTA zoning updates allow from 14 to 16, 24 units per acre with less parking requirements. I mean, that's the key. So, I mean, this zoning exemplifies the Story complex at the corner of Hobart and Maple Street. And that's and so they also allow up to 36 units all the way down High Street. So, and again, parking and the increased density. And basically all these initiatives are coming, from, the state down. So every year, the planning department goes through their zoning bylaw revisions and updates just to see what they can do. I'm just asking that we just look at the zoning bylaws in light of increased density and the decreased parking requirements and what can be done to alleviate that pressure. That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Arthur?
Oh, wait a minute. There was a group thing. Can Joanne speak to this?
Joanne will be able to speak during the citizens' comments.
So I don't think that I think my opinion is similar to what it was on 36. I'm not sure what this is really providing for. So is it intended just to have the planning department think about making changes, or is it telling the planning department you need to address overdevelopment created by MBTA zoning? Are we asking them to just think about it, or are we telling them to do something?
Well, the article says vote to have the planning department discuss and incorporate zoning bylaw updates to.
So I don't know what that means. Do you know what it means? What does it mean? Does it mean that we're telling them that they need to make changes? Or is it, I'm not trying to be a pain in the neck.
Yeah, I
I just
understand.
don't understand, I don't understand what this article is trying to do. Maybe I don't see it, but it says discuss and incorporate zoning bylaw updates. So it seems to me that it's saying, planning department, you need to incorporate new bylaw updates that will address density and, increased density and decreased parking. But however you do it, you can do it however you want, but you need to address it.
And if I could have a corollary question that you can think about, where in our governing documents does the authority of town meeting to direct the planning department to do anything actually exist?
That was going to be my next point.
Okay, so,
But so I was going to come to that next, but my biggest question is, my biggest concern, and again, I understand where you guys are coming from. I also understand where you guys are coming from, all right? You know, people want things not to change too much. Other people don't care how much change comes in, and I shouldn't say that, but they're fine with a lot of changes. And of course, my answer is it's always something in the middle, because my dad told me. Moderation is everything. But in this particular case, before I get to that question about can town meeting tell planning anything, is if this is saying that we want the planning department to make changes, then I kind of have the same problem I have in the other one, that you're demanding that changes be made. But what changes? Because it's just the vague increased unit density and decreased parking requirements. So that's, and I don't really think you can answer the question, Jim. I'm just.
Well, no, I think I can.
It's more of a
I mean,
hypothetical than anything.
No, because clearly, you know, the planning department every year has their yearly review of the zoning bylaws.
Right.
And so all I'm asking, all of this is asking, is to incorporate discussions in the zoning.
But I
bylaw.
don't think that's the way it's written, so that's my problem. It says discuss and incorporate zoning bylaw updates. It doesn't say discuss the possibility of incorporating zoning bylaw updates. If it said that, then what you just said would be true. But since it says discuss and incorporate, it's kind of making a demand on the planning department. And based upon some general concepts, which the general concepts may have validity, but again, it's not enough. So I don't think, and then that goes to my second point, which CR raised, which is I don't think you can order planning to do anything. Town meeting can order planning to do anything. So again, I just don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's specific enough, and I don't think you could do it even if it was specific enough, because I don't think the town meeting can require planning to do anything. Aaron, maybe can we ask Aaron about that?
well, I'm sure Aaron is going to agree with that assessment.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct, right?
I apologize, I was staring at some numbers. Oh, I didn't hear the question.
Does town meeting have any authority to order?
I don't think I'm the person that should answer that one.
Okay,
I think that relates
That's
to
fine.
the charter and
That- that's-
who has authority.
is that town council, CR?
That would be a question for town council,
Okay.
yes.
Order, Mr. Chairman.
I will allow your point of order, although you're not a member of the committee. Go ahead. You can go to the microphone, please, so that people can hear you.
Bill Bates, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4.
Bill, thank you for being here tonight. It means a lot.
Pleasure. Thank you. Always feel welcome.
We must be doing it wrong.
The person who submitted this is a William D. McKenzie.
Yes.
How can you be discussing a citizen's petition when the citizen is not here?
An objection I have raised with Mr. McKenzie on a personal level or private level, I will leave it at, it was actually Mr. Morose who wrote the article, and given the extenuating circumstances of Mr. McKenzie's inability to be here this particular evening, I am allowing Mr. Morose to stand in, as it were.
Thank you so much. And if you would educate me, please, if I can't do a point of order because I'm not a member of the Finance Committee, is it a point of information I should say?
No, it's just sitting there silently.
Just sitting there?
You can start practicing now.
You always have time to talk, Bill, just when you get to talk. All right, I mean, I think I've made my points on partly on the last one and partly on this one. I just don't think it works, and I don't think it's legal, basically. I don't think it can do anything, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Paul?
Yes.
You're up.
I really don't have much to say because I think I've heard a lot, and it seems, some of it seems repetitious to me. It really does. And you know, the lawyers can tear it apart and not put in every comma, and we're still going to be at the same spot. All right. I don't see the change coming in. Personally, I was a little surprised at the design of the project that I know is the one we're probably referring to. I did have questions about parking, but I hear a lot of things about, well, we have to revitalize the town. We have to bring more people into the town. How are we going to revitalize? How are we going to get restaurants if no one's going to come? Well, we're going to get restaurants because we're going to bring people in, but we don't want to bring people in. It's like, not in my backyard. So, you know, I'm done.
Thank you.
That's it.
Eric?
Tonight is probably not the time to have, I think, the more robust conversation that was alluded to earlier. Clearly, we do need one. Similar to, you know, what I said earlier and similar to what Paul said, I think that, one, I hear the frustration and I hear the concern, and I think folks are asking for things that are not in the town's best interest, you know, when it is understood. And I would love to have the conversation, what is it we're trying to get to, not what is it we're trying to get rid of, right? So when we have that conversation, I think that would be a healthy, good conversation to have with all of the moving pieces, because you can't hold everything, freeze it here, decrease, increase, we don't want more parking, we do want more parking, without having what are the consequences of that. As Paul said, businesses thrive with people. Businesses thrive with people. So if you don't have the people, you don't want the people to come, your businesses aren't going to thrive. You're not going to have a thriving downtown. This conversation is going on all across the Commonwealth. It's going on all across the region. There are some things in community development that are very clearly understood by the professionals in community development. You need foot traffic if you want your businesses to thrive. They have to be able to afford to live there if you're going to get foot traffic. So if you want foot traffic, that means they have to live close enough to walk there. So you got to build it for them, but you don't want to build it. You want them to live further away and nowhere to park. We keep talking in circles, and I think it would be helpful to have people see that these conversations are not, they're not yes or no conversations. Every piece that we move left has consequences on the right, the up, and the down, and we need to then find that sweet spot. There's a sweet spot out there, I believe, and some people miss their opportunity to arrive at that sweet spot when you have 5 years of development and folks, you know, look at it, the finished product, and then throw rocks at it, and that's unfortunate. But there is an opportunity for more discussion now that folks are paying attention. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I think, if I may chat for a minute.
Yeah, because you won't have any time after I start.
Yeah, that's my plan. You know, I agree with your sentiment, Eric, and, you know, one of the frustrations of being on the Finance Committee is that with citizens petitions, we are limited on either a recommendation to go forward with exactly what you're presenting or a recommendation of no action. Our hands are tied. Unlike with a traditional warrant article, for example, the General Stabilization Fund, where we can make changes to that, a citizen's petition, we cannot edit. Additionally, I think, and the opportunity to make changes to that on the town meeting floor are also incredibly limited, and most of them would be called out of order, right? So I think, procedurally, I think you can probably, read the writing on the wall and see where we are, but I think there's a general sentiment, certainly from this group of individuals, that some kind of, I always forget what we had back in the 80s.
Balanced growth steering committee.
A balanced growth steering committee, which I believe the select board chairman at one point referred to something similar in discussions with regards to these 3 citizens petitions was brought up, might be the right way for the town to move forward as a larger group, with everyone who wants to participating, and listening, and making a decision tied to our rather constricting warrant, is probably not the smartest move. So it's certainly something, again, we're tied to an up or down vote on this in a very limited way. But I think what you're hearing from us tonight, and I hope you are hearing it, is we certainly understand, we hear you, and people are listening. So, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, if I had the opportunity, honestly, especially with this particular warrant article, to offer an amendment, I probably would have offered an amendment to the extent of to have the town manager appoint a, call it whatever you want. I mean, the Balanced Growth Steering Committee is the name that we use, but you can call it whatever you want, with some specific group of people, member from the Planning Board, a member from the Board of Appeals, a member from the Conservation Commission. I really like the idea of it coming from our new town manager, because I think it's an opportunity for her to be able to really grasp a hold of what is clearly an issue that have affected people. Now, again, I am under no circumstance am I going to even begin to accept the idea that as a community we have paid no attention to zoning and development. David Griffin got elected select board member in 1968 because took his cow from his farm on Wenham Street and put a sign on it that said, "Save our town farms." So since 1968, there has been a movement within this town to impact and to address zoning. Again, both David McKenna and myself started our quote-unquote political careers as arguably anti-development individuals. In my case, it was on the east side of Route 114. In his case, it was on the west side of Route 114. All of these things have been consistent within this town in trying to address it. Our zoning bylaw is entirely different and so much more improved than it was in 1975 and what it was in 1984 when I started in this business. And I think that's all good things. But again, I think that in this particular situation, the chair is absolutely right. We are limited to what has been provided to us, and unfortunately, what has been provided to us is either unclear, questionable from a legality standpoint, or likely to result in very negative unintended consequences. On this one here, I will go much farther than my legal brother does. The planning board is appointed under Article 15, Section 15 of our Town Manager Act. They operate under Section 81, Chapter 81 and Chapter 81A and Chapter 41 of Massachusetts General Law. Town meeting has no more authority to limit or dictate to that independently created entity within our town government than they would to tell some resident when they got to brush their teeth. That's just the reality of it. And, I understand people will give me the old, well, our lawyers have their own opinion. Yeah, but sometimes our opinions are right. And I'm telling you on this one, I'll bet you my opinion's right. So, again, think about other options. Think a little bit outside the box. Think about being part of the solution. Not that this is you, but don't just be throwing rocks at the windows from outside. things work better when we work together on these things, and we try to find a solution that doesn't get imposed by one side or the other on something.
Leave it at that.
Thanks, Mike. Erin?
I appreciate all my peers' questions. I think they've answered everything that I would have asked, everything I would have asked, and no more questions.
Mr. Blake?
Just as a point of information, I believe that the building on Hobart and Maple was done by variance. Is that correct? Yeah. Wasn't that the
Overlay.
ZBA? But it wasn't actually from the MBTA zoning. Nothing to do with it. Okay.
I'm just going to the project defined as Maple Square begrudgingly, I just had to get that little dig in. It's the only thing I don't like about it, really, is irrelevant to the MBTA zoning.
Okay. So this, and that project was before the zoning board of appeals many times, correct? Because there were variances granted? There were no variances? None? But there were some applied for, weren't there? Wasn't there a drive-through?
It was a height variance. Drive-through.
Go ahead.
microphone,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I apologize. So for the audience, were there variances necessary for the development that is Maple Square? No, there were some design waivers. I think they got 3 or 4 feet of height variant, not variance, I shouldn't call it that. I'm just saying it's not a variance. It was a design waiver for rooftop mechanicals.
Okay.
But there was a few design exceptions that were granted in that process.
Okay. So I think somebody mentioned before that they want to have a conversation about development in Danvers. The issue I have with that is it's not a single conversation. It's a constant conversation. And you don't get to say, I don't have time. I have 2 jobs. Yeah, I have 5 kids. I have a job. And speaking of time, we've been here for an hour talking about 3 citizens petitions that are at best ambiguous, at worst unlawful, filled with information that's simply not accurate. The building that people complain about all day long on Facebook has nothing to do with the MBTA zoning. This article implies that it does. There's a lot of flailing going on, and I think, it's not just my time, it's professionals' time. I've been here long enough that I've seen several of these zoning changes go through the process, come before us, and go before town meeting to very little opposition. And I know that Mark Zubrick was sitting here paying attention in 2020 and 2018 when these things went through. I was at the town meeting. I didn't hear any, maybe there were a few, but I didn't hear very much opposition. You don't get to say, I don't have the time. And then when everything gets put through and we've invested a lot of staff time, a lot of volunteer time in putting forth what we think is the best plan for the town, to just throw your toy and say, no, we don't want that, go do it over. That's effectively what people are asking for. And I think what the gentleman who said, I wish I'd been paying attention 20 years ago, really meant is that he should have been involved on a more constant basis. There's zoning board of appeals meetings all the time that people can go to. I've heard people, every single candidate that's not on the select board, say that the overdevelopment, and you know what? Not a single one of them, not one, has mentioned that the select board are the people that appoint the zoning board of appeals. That's probably the most direct thing you can do to slow down growth in this town, and not a single one of them, not one, has mentioned that as a power. Not one. It needs to be more thoughtful. I don't disagree with some of the complaints that people are making. I get that when people, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths. If somebody says the character of their town is changing, I don't think it means what type of people are coming in. I think it means they don't want to sit in traffic. They don't want their utilities, schools, and other infrastructure overstressed, and they don't want the view from their front porch to be taken over by something dramatically different than what they're looking at right now. And I understand that. I feel the same way about my house. But there has to be logic and thought put forth at the times when it's ripe for deciding, not after the fact. If you guys had come through tonight and maybe suggested, hey, maybe we have a citizen's position to encourage Danvers to join the lawsuit that other towns have filed against the state. Okay, we could have a conversation about that. But like literally just saying, 3 different articles that are saying we just want to do this to like 5 years of work, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And it like needs to be more thoughtful and coherent, and it can't be a single conversation. People have to participate in the very transparent processes that have been laid out for this and many other issues in this town and every other town in the state. And they can't cry when decisions get made without them. Those are the facts of life. That's it.
Well, I would like to make a comment on a couple of things you said. Number one is, we're not standing here throwing rocks, and we're not coming out of the blue. And you said in 2020 when this all started.
But this article was last year, Jim. The last article was last year, 12 months ago. We were all here for crying out loud, and nobody said a word.
So
1 year ago.
So,
Joanne, we're not ready for citizen comments. You can be seated, please.
So in 2020, Mark Zuber and I had a meeting to go over the zoning that was prepared and implemented in 2020. And there were over 45, 50 people there, and I posted that out on the morass of Facebook. It's not like this is just out of the clear blue. People have been concerned about this, and yeah, there's always, there used to be a 35, 65 percentage of town meeting members going, no, the 35, no, we don't want this, but 65, yeah, we want it. Now it's just a mere whimper, okay?
Right.
So it's not like people aren't paying attention and understanding what's going on. And you are correct. Yeah, we kind of used wrong words. We're just really concerned about.
No, I get it. I get it. I understand.
Okay.
I get it.
I'm done.
I'm good.
Wally, you're all set?
Thank you.
Did you have something else? Questions from the audience?
Your blood pressure.
Joanne, go ahead.
I wanted to, Joanne Ragucci, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. I just wanted to address this gentleman on the board's comments that we just want to rip up what everything's been done over the past 5 years and so forth. This is citizen participation. Whether it's now, whether it was 5 years ago, whether it was 5 minutes ago, this is us trying to participate in our town and to listen to the residents that we volunteer and serve for. And this is our effort. Jim went through a lot to get these 3 petitions put together in this town. A lot of frustration, a lot of meetings, a lot of, circle and jerking around. He did the best he could with this because he couldn't get straight answers from the town and so forth. This is our way. We're trying to participate. And sir, whether if you like it or not, we are. And
Joanne,
if
if you
it's
could
not,
just-
if it's,
Joanne,
if
excuse
it's-
me.
I'll
If you-
speak to you.
I know,
This isn't
Joanne, if you could speak to the article, please.
Article 36. Are we on, Jim?
37.
37. If this isn't a great effort, we're sorry, but it's an effort. Okay, so I'm getting a little frustrated sitting here and kind of being dressed down by the Finance Committee. Whether you know more history about the town, whether you know this or that, we're trying to do our best too. So I'm going to go home now because I've been here for an hour and a half. I have a husband with cancer. I have a mother who needs me, who's an invalid. I'm going to go home now to them because I feel this committee has wasted my time tonight, and you've wasted the town of Danvers' time. I'm disgusted. I'm leaving. I'm so mad.
Any other questions from the audience? Noah, go ahead, please.
So I know the petitioners in here, but I know Jim wrote it. I was just wondering if you could expand on this language in the warrant that says demographics. I'm wondering if you could just explain or define what you meant by demographics in terms of future zoning.
Yeah, I really didn't give it much thought. Let me just give you a little history here, all right?
contrary to the
No,
presentation.
no, seriously.
And Jim, if you haven't given it much thought, if you could keep your answer to under a minute, I would appreciate it.
You know, Article 38 was the one that we wrote, okay? And that was the only one we put all our wood behind and got all these articles going. The Thursday before the deadline, I got a letter from the planning board saying that you can't do this because you have to have public meetings, and it just wouldn't fly. It's just totally illegal. So in Hail Mary, you know, we put these two other ones, you know, Mark Zubrick put one together, and I just wrote one trying to just, you know, put some sense into it. And demographics, what are demographics? What people, you know, it's their jobs, their, you know, there's a whole list of, you know, when you get the demographics of the town, there's 25 categories. So I'm just saying, Danvers is Danvers. We got a demographic, you know, I could go to the thing and look at it and see what it is. But it's you know, it's just, you know, I don't know.
is it even in the petitions?
Pardon me?
Is the word even in the petitions?
It is.
38.
It's in 37.
It's in the explanation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, in the exposition, Beacon Hill legislature, city town, rule of mandate, blah, blah, blah.
I know, I was just reading what was on the screen. That's
Local
okay.
command person and Danvers personality. I mean, you would have thought, I lived and grew up in this town of Port, and we used to walk to Sandy Beach by the lacquer company. Maybe that's my problem. You walk by, you were high as a kite, but.
You're making my point, Jim.
Anyone else? Yes. Annette?
Annette Collins, Precinct 1 town meeting member for many, many, many years. Also resident in town for 59 years and hoping to be here for another 50 if I can, God willing. What I want to do is thank the board, the finance committee. I know you don't sit around waiting for people to thank you. From all the history and all the many of you who grew up here, with family here, who still came later and joined and want to help the town. I also support what Nova has said. I love this town. I was transferred here as a young person from a very small little city called North Adams out in Western Mass. And I thought I had arrived in some amazing place. I still think of it as amazing. And it was not the same. We had a five and dime down in the square, plus the things that Mike remembers that I don't, because I too was raising 5 children. So for me, I thank you. I thank you for all you do. These warrant articles, I do sometimes feel there's a frivolity with them, because I know there's a law, there's a legal way of doing things. And first of all, when Wally said it, I totally feel the same way. It's the law. We voted it in, and now we have to try to work it out, and I think you are all helping us do that. And all the people who are here contributing also do that. And by the way, there are a lot of people who feel like, as I do, that we are not heading in the wrong direction. That in fact, much like you have pointed out, there are people who want to go forward and are not pulling at the fabric of what happens and what happened in Maple Square. Every time I walk by there now, I'm kind of amazed. It's coming together, and yes, it takes time, but the rest of the town will follow suit, I'm sure. And thank you anyway.
Thanks, Annette. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David McKenna, Precinct 8 Town Meeting Member. A couple of questions. I agree the language in this is flawed, unfortunately. Great job trying, but unfortunately, the planning department does not incorporate bylaw changes. They can only suggest them. That's town meeting's job. But I think I disagree with a couple of members who said the town meeting does not have the authority to direct town hall. If not, why the hell am I a town meeting member? I think that's a part of my job, is to decide the direction the town should be going and make suggestions how to get there. I think there was a good suggestion about having a study committee. I've been on 2 or 3 of them myself over the years, and we've made some progress because of them. And I guess I have a question. Would it be appropriate, I know you can't amend this because this is a citizen petition. Can there be a member from the floor that would suggest a committee be formed?
Because of interest among members of this committee, the conversation on the select board, I did reach out to the moderator. I won't hold her to this, but she indicated that no, that would be ruled out of order.
Now, maybe there's something that discussions during town meeting will
yeah.
encourage
Right.
the new town manager and the board of selectmen,
Yep.
whoever they may be. Hope we have a good board when the selection's over. We got some good people running. I hope the best 2 win, but best 2 hopefully will, and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anything else? Is there a motion from the board?
Move no action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second of no action. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Jim, just a word of thanks from this committee. We appreciate all the work that you did and the abuse you took from us. Lovingly, I hope you understand that we do appreciate the time that you put in and the work that you and others have made, without a doubt. And we hope that you continue to participate in conversations around this. Thank you.
If I could, just very quickly, I want to thank Jim as well. I had the opportunity throughout this process to have some communication with Jim. I know last year I had said to Mark, you know, instead of coming here with one of your ridiculous, ambiguous articles, why don't you talk to somebody who might be able to help you work it? Jim did that. At the end, I know what he was trying to do with Article 30. I don't agree with it. I know what he was trying to do. I think he should have recognized from my discussions that what happened was going to happen, but I appreciate what he does, and I do think that everybody who's here should, again, I don't normally talk nicely about town meeting members, but Jim is really one of the most earnest and one of the most honest people that we have in town. And that's coming to the fact that Jim and I have probably never agreed on anything, but I do appreciate both of those things from you, so thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, and now that the platitudes are over, we'll move quickly on to the special town meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A special town meeting, we have 3 warrant articles to discuss. First is unpaid bills. This article will be on the warrant if we had an unpaid bill. At this time, we do not. So again, the procedure, surprisingly, this is the first time I think I've had no unpaid bills, so I guess the question would be, is it no action, and then we would, if one pops up between now and May 19th?
Yes, we'll be looking for a vote of no action now, and then if on the night of town meeting, the 19th?
Yep.
The 19th, we will have a FinCom meeting scheduled for 7 PM in the event we need to change that recommendation.
Yep.
Move no action.
Just no questions from the audience? Great. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Article 2, budget transfers. We have a couple of budget transfers. We talked a little bit about this during the budget process 2 weeks ago. We're recommending free cash of $200,000 and $150,000 from DPW personnel, both to go into DPW operating to resolve the snow and ice deficit. Then we have $30,000 from IT personnel to IT operating. We had a vacancy to begin the year, and we had to contract out some services. So it's just taking the surplus from the salaries and putting it into the operating to cover those expenses. And then department heads personnel, a transfer into HR personnel. We had, again, 2 vacancies in that office as well. And we brought on some temp staffing. And in order to pay for that temp staffing, we're requesting a transfer.
Thank
Happy
you.
to answer any questions on those.
Questions from anyone on the board? Questions from the audience?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to make sure that I clarify with this, so the $350,000 that's going to the DPW operating is entirely for over expenditures in regards to the
Snow and ice.
Snow and ice.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move the article as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And then lastly, for special town meeting, Article 3, the State Public Works Grant. This year, we're expecting, pending approval by the legislature, to receive little over $1.2 million in Chapter 90 funding.
Great. Questions from the board? Questions from the audience?
Sorry.
Go ahead. You're-
Rodney, how, with the situation that we have, where in the process of these grants in regards to their approval at the state level, is there any possibility that these are going to be pulled back, or are we basically secure in the fact that this is going to be here with us? And if for some reason our portion does get pulled back, I'm assuming that we simply just won't do the projects in an order.
Yes, so again, knock on wood a lot tonight. I expect it to be approved, but for some reason, if that amount was lowered or whatever reason not approved, this would not authorize DPW to still go out and spend $1.2 million. We'd have to revise our paving schedule.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article as written.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the annual town meeting.
Annual town meeting, so it's my understanding that we don't vote on Article 1, correct? And then Article 2, we took care of 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
That leaves us with Article 3, which also we discussed a couple weeks ago, and that's just the vote of the town meeting required to authorize the electric division to operate on a self-supporting basis.
Any follow-up questions from the discussion 2 weeks ago? Anything from the audience on Article 3? Is there a motion?
Can I abstain from this?
One abstention?
The article. And I second.
Motion and a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention.
Thank you.
And just publicly, so people know, the reason I abstained from that is because I'm on the municipal light board, so I don't think it's necessarily an issue, but we don't want any impropriety.
Article 5, annual article authorizing the collector of taxes to use any of the tools at their disposal to collect taxes.
Any questions from the committee? Questions from the audience about the collection of your taxes? Great. Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Article 6, committee reports, again, an annual article. This one, the fiscal year 2024 annual town report was distributed to all town meeting members.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 7?
Article 7, and I hope he's just waiting out in the hallway, but Colby
Oh,
Cousins
and there he is.
here. Look at that.
Magic.
Say his name 3 times and he appears.
Just like that.
Unfortunately.
I know whose email isn't going to work tomorrow.
Why do you think I said it tonight? Colby's here to talk about 3 articles. One's our annual technology warrant, and then we have a couple standalone articles related to some infrastructure. So with that, I will turn it over to Colby.
Sure, thank you. Colby Cousins, IT Department. The technology plan this year consists of a general government request of $197,000, school request of $185,000, library 15, and then our reallocation of regional revenues at 147 for a total of 544.
There's a further breakout, and we're happy to answer any questions. I would point out that the regional IT benefits us not only in some revenue that we collect in, but it allows us to bulk purchase and get a much better rate on particularly our cybersecurity than we would if we had to go into the market on our own.
Okay, I was going to ask about that.
What are the 7 partner communities now?
Oh, boy. We have Middleton, Topsfield, Hamilton, Wenham, Essex, Manchester, and Marblehead.
Great. Excellent. Got anything?
I'm good.
Paul?
All set?
Eric?
I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Just in general, if you could just say a word about trends in IT. So, we see the numbers now, where the trends are going, and certainly concerns about what those trends might be, including the rise of AI and.
Yeah, so those are some concerns for sure. And we've been, over the last few years, digging very deeply into cybersecurity. And when AI was kind of released into the mainstream, we wanted to take that very seriously as well. For two reasons: the security risk it presents, and also the opportunity for efficiency in our organization, right? So we just this year received a $150,000 grant to study AI readiness, and that's essentially the cybersecurity prerequisites, data security, protection of your sensitive data, all of that type of stuff that you really ought to have in place before you just unleash AI into your environment.
Perfect. Mike?
Nope.
Aaron?
Eric asked mine, all good.
All right. Ted?
All set, thank you.
Wally?
Good, thank you.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion on Article 7?
Move the article.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Next up, we have Article 8, Disaster Recovery.
Yeah, thank you. So this is our disaster recovery. We are transitioning from an on-premise disaster recovery site, which is a capital investment of about $500,000 every 5 years. We're moving to a subscription model in the cloud for disaster recovery, and it looks like we'll realize a cost avoidance of about $100,000 every 5 years in that cycle. So we have some actuals in now that's proving to be true. So in the future, you'll probably see an adjustment to the number of this article, or we may try and operationalize it in the operating budget at some point as well. But it is a cost reduction over our current approach to disaster recovery.
Thank you. Wally?
I'm good.
Ted?
So this would be 100,000 ongoing, every year roughly?
Yeah, so
So
initially, we matched the budget, 100,000. We're finding our actuals are coming in around 80. So that'll give us the option of, we probably have enough money to make the 5th year that we would normally have to fund, or we could reduce it to about 80,000 and realize the 20,000 annually. We have some flexibility there to discuss with the budget team of how we want to approach it.
As, is the pricing on the annual expenditure fairly locked in? But my motivation for asking is, I know the price of computing and storage, at least I'm under the impression that it's being driven up because of the demand for AI, data center demand for AI and or mostly AI, but also Bitcoin and stuff like processing power. And you can laugh at me and tell me that has nothing to do with with this, and I'd be totally okay with that. But you could also say, good question.
It's a good question.
Either one.
So, I'm sorry, what was?
No, I didn't understand the question. It's not an option.
It's all right. So we're switching from spending $500,000 every 5 years to basically to turning it into a software as a service, right?
Correct, yes.
To spend, I think you said $80,000 a year roughly right now?
Yeah, and it is a variable cost model, so we have to
Right.
get some actuals in to verify that. But it's about $80,000 a year, and the reason for that is because we're only paying for the storage in the cloud.
Yep.
We only need to pay for the compute resources if we have a disaster. And in that scenario, we'd be covered by insurance.
Okay.
So by kind of leveraging those opportunities, we're going to avoid $100,000 that we used to pay.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just ask the question. We're not concerned that 80 is going to be 80 this year, next year it'll be 90, it'll be 120 the year after that, and it explodes the pipes versus if we just kept it in-house at the 500 every 5 years.
No, one of the things we're going to be doing too is, these are legacy deployments that we're working with here. So we want to get the legacy deployments into a place where we have the freedom to turn down resources over time as we retire them. With a capital investment, we're stuck with it for the entire life of
Right.
Okay. I'm good, thank you.
No questions.
Mike?
No, thank you.
I had questions, but I think I'm good.
I was excited for the question.
Yeah.
All right, Paul?
No questions.
I'm good.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion on Article 8?
Move the article.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 9, which I believe, if you're looking at your screen, it should read phone service consolidation?
That is correct. That's mislabeled there. Article 9 is phone service consolidation, which is another project that will allow us to consolidate and generate some long-term savings. Colby?
Yep, so we currently have 7 different phone systems in town. They're integrated together so they speak to each other, but that is a lot of back-end maintenance, and some of these products are, one of the companies just filed for bankruptcy. So we want to get out of this distributed model and move to an enterprise phone system in the cloud where we can just lift all of our on-premise stuff up there, consolidate all the phone service and bulk purchase it, and the savings we'll realize from bulk purchasing the phone service will cover the ongoing operational cost of the phone system itself in the cloud. So, and we're expecting an overall operational savings of around $50,000 in our phone bill, just by changing the approach.
Molly?
Good.
Ted?
I'm good.
Aaron?
No questions.
So, I'm just trying to think back now in the past, right? So when we talk about these 7 independent phone systems, are these hardwired? Because I know, for example, in the schools, we spent a substantial amount of money a few years ago, over the course of a few years, because those phones had to be hardwired for security reasons. Is that one of the 7 independent phone systems that we're talking about?
It is, and the way we're going to approach this is keying off that phone system.
Okay.
Because it's the most robust phone system we have. So we're going to use the upgraded version of that. Our licensing allows us to be either on-premise or in the cloud, so we can migrate without having to double spend. And then it is also compatible with the rest of our town environment so that we can have one unified phone system for town and schools and really consolidate all of that spend.
Okay, thank you.
So is it, I think, was it NEC that went out of business, or?
Mitel filed for bankruptcy here.
And the contract term was my question, and then with the system that we're getting into, there is some hardware replacements that will go along with that, I imagine.
Correct. So a number of our phones in the schools, they're all Cisco phones. A number of them are compatible with the new system, but a large portion of them need to upgrade with new handset devices.
Then my next question is, are you rolling this out with training? You know how folks are.
Yes. Yes.
What are you saying?
Having done this, right, the minute you roll out a new phone system, folks can no longer
Answer the phone?
They can't answer the phone. They, hit the wrong buttons, especially when we introduce newer technology and it's voice over IP or something, right? So
They'll have soft phones they can work with too. So
it's easier if you understand the technology, but if you're used to what you're used to, it creates pain points for management. So I just wanted to flag that. Like, if the training isn't attached to it, we do a great thing, we spend good money, and then people go home saying, I'm fed up with the new whatever. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Eric. Paul?
I'm sorry, just to go to that, because to go back to the situation with the ones in the school, because I think the ones in the schools are the ones that I always would be the most concerned with, because again, that is not just a communication mechanism in terms of being able to call up and find out what's for lunch down in the lunchroom, but obviously it's an integral part of our security system within all of those schools. In your opinion, this system is going to be a better system for that regard?
absolutely, yeah.
And in regards to the training, which I think Eric is absolutely right on, you have no problems being able to make sure that those teachers and those staff, school staff, are capable to be able to use those phones for exactly what we want them to be able to use them for.
I would say we can minimize those problems, yes.
Well, I want to tell you, I don't want you to just minimize them. This is one area where you got to perform it. Yeah, and there's no half-truths on this one.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
part of it is we'll be doing the project over the summer, so we'll get a little bit of flexibility in testing and stuff like that. But we are preparing kind of 1 or 2 page guidance sheets on using the phone, and we also, as part of the project, included training, some regular training for our users.
Pre-recorded YouTube videos pushed out to people so they can watch it.
Yeah, there is some video-based training from a company called Fible, particularly on you can have your phone on your computer now, and
That's exactly my point, because I know that's where it's going, right?
Yeah, so.
Just 2 more.
Okay, 2 more.
Well, the first one is
Since Bill Bradstreet isn't here, you can have those
I was
two.
just saying.
Where is Bill?
It's the computer access, phone on the computer, like that's the kind of intricacy that I think should be very clear, right? That's part of the new modern telephone integrated into IT, that training has to be attached to. And my other question, does it come with, are we doing 4-digit dialing now across the entire town? Is that?
Correct.
Because I think to Mike's point, now it's easy, it should be easier to get to whatever department from within the system.
Correct.
And then the contract term. How long are we in with the new, once we consolidate, are we in for like 3 years and go?
Yeah, we're in
And
3 years.
okay.
Yep.
Paul?
You said your savings about 50,000?
Yeah, we'll
Over what
see.
period of time? Ye-
That's out of the phone line item in the school's operating budget.
Mhm.
We should see that savings, and so that's in the operating budget. So annual savings.
Would you be saving 50,000 a year or 50,000 over the life of the contract?
50,000 a year, yeah.
And Mike touched upon a little bit. We think we're going to be more secure, correct, with these phones?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Has there been a lot of cyber attack on phones nationally, like for towns? Or is it through into the computers and that type of thing? Or
Yeah, it's
phone's been a
interesting.
problem?
We get them in the phones every once in a while. People get into the phones and make calls out. We've had it happen 2 or 3 times probably over the years. And nothing seemed really malicious, just they were able to get in and do something, and then we had to run around and figure out what they did and block the leak.
I
But
think we'll be better off then. I mean,
But this phone system isn't so reliant on local personnel to manage that type of stuff. It's in the cloud, and there's a team of experts working on it. So way more specialized. We're generalists, right? We do our best with many systems around here. But when we can take advantage of that specialized expertise, it makes things a lot more efficient for us.
okay, that's it. Thank you.
I don't think there's anything else to ask about phones.
No. Does anyone in the audience have anything they'd like to ask about phones? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let's take a quick 5 minutes and return at 8:50.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Article 25.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Article 25, Transportation Services. This is requesting funding for year 2 of a 2-year pilot program. As you may know, we're part of the Salem Skipper On-Demand Rideshare Service. We're under no obligation beyond the second year, but we found the first-year funding within existing resources. This is an appropriation to fund year 2. Aaron Henry's here to answer any questions we may have. We'll open it up.
Aaron, if you want to just give us, before we ask any questions, just an update how the program's going, I'd be very curious to hear that.
Thank you for that question. I apologize. I went into the operations center, which gives us all the latest, greatest today. It was not working, so the numbers I'm giving you are about 3 weeks old. I apologize for that. I'm not sure why the system was down today. Basically, we do about a little over 270 rides a week, are either originating or ending in Danvers. The service has about a 30-minute wait time. If you're in Danvers and call for a ride, it's going to take about 30 minutes. The hotspot is the Liberty Tree Mall. We have limited geofence. We couldn't afford to join the program and put the entire town in, so we had to select a smaller subset where it could go. The Liberty Tree Mall in the Endicott corridor is the hotspot here in Danvers. So again, people say I don't see it around, and I say, yep, that's probably true, because unless you're sitting downtown, you'll probably miss it. If you sat at the mall, you would definitely see it. For a point of reference, when the MBTA cut the 465 was averaging 16 riders a day. And so we're
This
seeing
is more.
robust, I won't say robust, we're seeing far more ridership than what we were getting with the MBTA 465, and we're still climbing. As Rodney said, unfortunately, this is largely funded by a federal earmark. And that is expiring, and so the cities of Salem, Beverly, and the town of Danvers are all trying to figure out what's going to come next a year from now when that funding all dries up. I think in our case, we've been working with the MBTA to try to restore some sort of service to Danvers. Not sure that that's going to pan out, but the conversations have been productive. So for us, it's probably moving on and hoping that we see restoration of service from the MBTA proper. We've given them access to this data set to prove to them that we have demand and we have a need for public service that reaches beyond just the mall. Right now, there are 2 existing bus lines that terminate at the Liberty Tree Mall, but we need to get into the community. And so this project has been successful in demonstrating to the MBTA that we do have ridership downtown. So thank you for the question, and I will sit by in case there's others.
No, stay right there. That's, I already have a question. Outside of the mall, where else can you get the skipper?
Cherry Hill, North Shore Community College, which has actually been a fairly popular hit, and that's a lot of commuting from, you'll see the folks come up using public transportation and then get off of a commuter rail station in Salem and then pop over to here. The other one would be downtown is the third. There's also the Leahy Clinic, which is kind of out that way on Kirkbride Drive. So we tried to pick a couple of the medical spots. So again, I say the Liberty Tree Mall, it does extend up to Mass General and it doesn't go into Endicott Plaza where Market Basket is, but it gets you right there. And again, I have seen people waiting there with groceries for the Salem Skipper to return. So those are basically the hotspots. I'm trying to remember if I'm missing one.
Have you used it?
I have not.
Okay. And how much does it cost?
$2.
$2. Okay.
$1 if you're a senior.
And what's the age of a senior today? I'm just curious.
I apologize. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to go with 55.
Okay.
You're almost there.
I think we did the AARP.
We're in Mike.
So what you're saying is that Wally and Arthur are seniors. That's right.
Yeah. Sadly, I'm starting to get those emails down too.
Arthur, got anything?
Well, let me ask you, so this has nothing to do with anything, but how far does it go up? Does it stop at Endicott Street? Does it stop at Mass General?
Yeah, it basically, because it can use that property to turn around or go straight, I mean, if it needs to
Okay,
go back
so-
to Salem, it might go out to the right, but
So this
it won't
is-
turn into Endicott Plaza.
So I won't have a problem with this, but, so do the people from Market Basket walk across Endicott Street with all their groceries to get,
There's
that
a
sounds
pedestrian-
awfully dangerous to
There's a
me.
signalized, there is a protected crosswalk there. Again, you don't do it unless you have to do it.
Okay.
But it is there, and we do make sure that we have, there's a signal down at the exit ramp as well. So there's 2 pedestrian crossings there that have protected.
Do they get to take their carriages too, across the street?
Not get to take their
Sounds
carriage.
very difficult.
Yes.
All right. That's all.
So is the goal to bring that type of service, the skipper, down into Danvers Square eventually or not?
Well,
That just be bus
no, that
service?
is, the goal currently is restore MBTA service. We're paying a lot for nothing. And the goal was always to try to use the Salem Skipper as a pilot project to demonstrate to the MBTA. The real vision for the Skipper was to have the MBTA look at that as a service model that might make more financial sense for them to adopt in some of the outskirts of the core region that they serve. I don't think that's where they're going with it, but if they restore service to us and we get that back, that's still a huge step forward for us.
They're two separate businesses, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Eric?
A comment and a question. The comment is, and I have heard really good things about the Salem Skipper and the expansion from folks that I talk to in Salem and in Beverly. Like, it really does meet a need in the community. Like, folks are very appreciative of the service. And my question is, you know, $2 is affordable. What does that actually generate in terms of revenue? Is it anything noticeable? Is it
No. I
not?
mean, $2 a ride, and they're doing 3,000 or 4,000 rides in system-wide.
Mhm.
They're getting some money, but transportation doesn't make a ton of money, whether it's private or public.
Got it.
Are they working off a grant?
Yeah.
the whole thing is grant
vast
funded.
majority of this is funded by a federal grant that we received.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Well, so basically, it's Uber, right, in a way?
Yeah.
And it's,
Yep.
is it through Uber, or are these actual Uber drivers, or are these?
It's a similar model, but this is by, the contractor is a company called VIA, V-I-A. If you go to VIA, I think it's ridewithvia.com, you can see they operate all over the world. But they basically are taking an Uber model, but saying we might stop and pick somebody up along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I've done my total stories tonight. I'm not allowed to have any more, but sometime I'll tell the story about my one time I used Lyft. But other than that, do you?
I won't make any comments.
Can you just tell that to Aaron
Yeah.
privately?
Do you think, though, that in this particular situation, the people prefer this type of, because it seems like we're getting a lot more activity with this than we had out of the bus. Granted, there's a more robust service area and locations, but is it plausible that maybe we don't want the bus service, we want something of this type to stay on plane, because we're actually going to get a better result out of it?
If I had a magic wand, as I
You
hinted
don't.
at earlier, I know.
Yeah.
If I did, I would again suggest to the MBTA that in, I won't say the hinterlands, but in the outer reaches of their service areas, I don't understand why running fixed route with large vehicles, I'm not surprised that there's financial problems in that organization. I think this model, distributed where there's no fixed routes. Now, we are using the data not so much in Danvers, but Beverly and Salem, the data is starting to reveal where fixed routes might be viable, because you're seeing regular patterns between this point and that point. So again, we were kind of hoping the T would come in and do a deep dive on that and maybe adjust their service model. That doesn't appear to be the case.
Thank you.
Aaron?
No questions.
All my questions have been covered. Thanks.
Wally?
I'm pretty good. This is the last year of this, though, correct?
This is year 2, this is it. I mean, we're not gonna make up.
Well, if your numbers are right, we're paying $8 a ride, they're paying $2 a ride, so it doesn't really make sense.
Correct. Yep.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second?
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you. 29.
29 and 30, two warrant articles related to the HERO Act, which granted additional exemptions to veterans. It'd be administrated by the assessing department, as our other exemptions are. Our chief assessor, John LaBelle, has been waiting anxiously to discuss these articles.
John, thank you for staying
We
tonight.
appreciate it. And we're happy to answer any questions. I think they're both good articles. One would adjust the exemption we give by CPI, and the other one would allow us to grant an additional exemption amount up to 100%. We can do that under existing Mass General law. Unfortunately, it's capped that your bill in the current year can't be less than the year before. Did I say that right? Thank you. So this would allow us to give them the full exemption, even if that means that their overall tax bill is slightly less than what it would have been the year before.
And we'll do questions together on both articles and then vote on them separately. So, Wally?
I'm good on this one.
Ted?
So can you explain, what's the HERO Act?
The HERO Act was signed by the governor.
Okay.
HERO Act was signed by the governor, I think last July or August, something like that, which expanded a bunch of veteran benefits. And these are just two of them.
Okay. So 29, you're basically just saying whatever the exemption is that applies
Yeah,
now can
the
be
state will
adjusted
come
by
up with a full
CPI.
adjustment, 2%, 5%, whatever it may be, we'll add that to the existing amount, statutory amount.
And then what, Article 30, it's saying,
All right, so currently, under the current clause that we use, for instance, one of the exemptions is $400. The town years ago adopted to grant up to an additional $400, so they could get up to $800. But that clause, the way that clause is written, is they can't pay less than they did the year before. So basically, their net tax bill after the exemption would stay the same until they reach that 800. This allows us to bypass that and just give them the 800 right away.
okay, so it's essentially like a town match
Correct.
of what
Right,
the
The
state.
state only reimburses us for
Okay.
the original 400. The rest comes out of the overlay.
Okay, that's it for me, thanks.
Erin?
Answered my questions, thank you.
Mike?
So this adjustment just, it ends up on the cherry sheet in terms of what we get from this, or do we?
For I think the section 20, Article 29 does, Article 30 would just come out of the overlay, correct?
Correct.
The additional exemption.
Okay, great, thank you.
Eric?
Nothing.
Paul?
All set.
I'm good, thanks.
Great. Questions from the audience? Yeah. Amy?
Thank you for everything you guys do. A lot of work. It's been a long night. Just one question. Amy Butler, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I know that the National Hero Act only applies to certain veterans. Does this apply to anyone who is a veteran, no matter when they served?
Good question.
No, this applies to the existing statutory exemptions, which are all based on disabled veterans.
Thank you. Anything else from the audience? Is there a motion on Article, oh, go ahead.
Obviously, the FinCom is free to do whatever they like with these. For Article 30, though, our recommendation would be to go to the full 100%, because we are asking you to pick the percentage.
Okay.
And the assessor and I are comfortable with the 100%.
Okay. Is there a motion on Article 29?
To approve Article 29 is written in the warrant article.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 30?
To accept Article 30 is written with the exemption amount of 100% of the amount of tax exemption granted to veterans.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, we have our annual revolving fund account article. Again, all this does is set the maximum amount that can be expended from these various revolving funds. The only one that has a slight uptick in the amount we're looking for authorization on is the child care program. I believe the rest are all level recommendations from the prior year.
Arthur?
And why is the childcare program up a little bit?
We get additional staffing.
Okay.
And cost of living increases.
Thanks.
Paul?
All set.
Eric?
Good.
Mike?
Good.
Aaron?
What is the child care program? Is that the
Fun club.
Oh, Fun
Yeah,
Club, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Ted, you okay with Fun Club?
I recuse myself. Actually, I don't need to anymore.
Not anymore,
No, you're
no.
good.
Wally?
I'd like Fun Club as well, thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 32.
Thank you. Last four this evening all revolve around stabilization funds. First is the Special Education Stabilization Fund. We're recommending this year that $500,000 be appropriated from free cash. That would bring the existing balance up to $1.25 million. This allows school committee with authorization of the select board to spend without further appropriation should we see an influx of special education tuition costs. Again, it's basically like our own version of a circuit breaker, essentially.
Wally?
No, I'm good with this.
Okay. Aaron?
No questions.
Or, I'm sorry, Ted?
Okay with it.
Okay. Mike?
I mean, other than the fact that in some of the cases, I wish we could put more into these stabilization funds, I'm fine with what we have.
Eric?
Yeah, and that was related to my question. 500,000 gets us to the 1.2, and that's budgeted somewhere. Did we already budget that?
Nope, so that just becomes our rainy day. So we do use the circuit breaker as part of our budgeting operating year over year, but this would be a standalone fund that we have not yet to tap. The good example is a couple of years ago, actually 2 out of the last 3 years, we had to do free cash transfers into the school department budget to keep it solvent due to special education costs higher than anticipated. This allows us in the future, if we do not have a strong free cash year and we do have that need, to tap into this fund.
So why 500 and not 7 or 3?
Statutorily, there is a cap on how much you can have in the Special Education Stabilization Fund.
There
This
we
would
go.
bring us pretty close to that maximum amount.
There we go.
Paul?
All set.
I'm good.
Great. Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move Article 32.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 33.
Article 33 is our General Stabilization Fund, and this is the town's rainy day fund. We're recommending $1 million be transferred into the General Stabilization from free cash. That would bring the projected balance at the end of FY '26 to 6.15. As we've talked about in prior years, the goal is to incrementally increase this to a point where this becomes our 8% target for our unassigned fund balance.
Anything?
Good.
What's the max that you're looking to hit on that fund? 1.6, 6.15 or more?
6.1's the target. Eventually, we'd like to increase it, based on available resources.
Beyond 6 point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'd like to get it to roughly 8% of unassigned fund balance.
Arthur? I'm sorry, Arthur's all set. Eric?
I'm good.
Mike?
Good, thank you.
No questions.
Ted?
No question.
Wally?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay. Questions from the audience? No.
I was going to ask one for Keith.
Okay.
I won't waste your time.
Thank you. Anything else from the audience? No? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Article 34 is the Debt Stabilization Fund. Again, this is our working stabilization fund. As you remember, last 2 weeks ago when we approved the operating budget, it included some debt stabilization fund to offset debt, mostly on school projects. Our replenishing target is 1.2 million, but in addition to that, 3.8 million was excess revenue from the landfill project. When we started the project, we recommended putting any additional revenue after expense into debt stabilization for future capital or debt needs. So that's why the recommendation is $5 million this year.
Wally?
Okay. So the 3.8 million from the landfill, is just gonna sit here for a while? The reason I ask is, and we asked with the school committee about what we thought we might come short in federal monies. And I think rather than spend this now, I'd like to see it sit till we know where the education funding ends up. And it seems that nobody could tell us at the last meeting where that was gonna be.
I mean, I guess the short answer is if we were in a situation where we needed to backstop the school budget, we could appropriate from any sort of general stabilization as well, or from available free cash. All the recommendations tonight still leave more than 1%. 1% is our policy to leave behind in free cash, which would be around 1.3 million. We're recommending 2.6 million. So to your point, should that situation arise, we would still have existing free cash. So I believe the superintendent said it was like a $1.6 million potential hole, should all of our federal aid be wiped out.
I'm good.
Good. Ted?
Are you able to use the debt stabilization to retire debt? I know that sounds like a really obvious question. Can you buy, I think I asked you before.
Yeah, and I owe you a response to that. I don't know if we can purchase our own. Yeah.
If some of our debt is trading at levels greater than we earn with cash sitting down the street at the bank, and we wanted to repurchase it at a discount, would we be able to do that, and would we be penalized by the rating agencies if we did it? I would assume no. I just want to ask.
I don't believe we'd be punished by the rating agencies, but I'm not positive we can do that. But that's a question I owe you an answer to.
Yeah, when we refinance.
We can
that debt-
refinance debt, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
there's
an overall
like I do corporate bonds by day, and corporates, if a bond is trading at a discount to par, they're well within their right to just go buy it in the open market. It's not like a mortgage where you can't be like, my mortgage is at 3% and now interest rates are 7%, so I can buy my mortgage back at 70. In the corporate bond world, you can do that, and in the municipal bond world, they absolutely trade there. I'm well aware of municipal bonds issued by credit-worthy issuers in Massachusetts that trade in the 60s, 60 cents on the dollar because of the interest rates they were issued at.
Which I think is, obviously it is true, but I thought we did have some limitations placed upon us when we refinanced in regards to our.
Yeah, so in other words, our call period, I believe, is 10 years on municipal bonds on when we could refinance, but.
Right, but refinancing and forced.
Yeah.
Calling bonds at par and buying them from a willing counterparty at 80 cents are two different things. But okay, that's fine.
Let me look into it.
Yeah.
Aaron?
Ted's question was good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mike, anything else?
No, thank you.
Eric?
That's what I mean. I don't know.
Not on this one. No.
Paul?
I'm all set.
Arthur?
All set.
Questions from the audience? Take a motion on 34?
I think Ted
Article
should be
34.
allowed to.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I?
I said Ted should be allowed to make the motion.
Oh, sure.
You asked a great question.
You did ask.
Yeah.
You want to make the motion, Ted?
Sure, motion to move the article.
Article 30.
Does anyone want to second Ted's motion? We have a motion and a second.
There we
All
go.
in favor?
There we go.
Lots of motions.
I didn't know that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And then we have the OPEB trust fund. So a couple years ago, we transitioned to funding this partially out of the operating budget and partially out of free cash. We talked about the operating budget a couple weeks ago, and this is the free cash portion, which would be $300,000. The projected balance in this trust would be approximately $18.5 million, and that's assuming the discount rate of a little over 5%. So we closed FY24 with $14.3 million. We're projected for FY25 to close at $16.3 million.
Great. Arthur?
Nope, all set.
Paul?
Probably could have asked this for any of them, but when you have the 18, or somewhere in the neighborhood of 18.54 million, where is it sitting?
That's invested in a trust fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Eric?
Makes sense.
And how, it's a trust fund impacted by market fluctuations?
It is.
And so the projection that you have there is based on what return?
Rose-colored glasses at this point.
That's what I wanted to get at, okay.
It's based on the discount rate we have based on evaluation, which is roughly over 5% return on investment.
We cross our fingers. Okay.
Has that been stable over the stable isn't the word I want to use, but.
I mean,
prior
just like
to,
anything else in the market, we've
consistent?
had a couple strong years. 3 years ago, we had a really tough year, so.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Mike?
I think we answered this back when we discussed this in the sort of the overview, but if we did sort of have the break glass and pit here, we could rob this amount, and we would face consequences, but if.
Yeah, I mean, accounting-wise, I wouldn't know, it would probably require some type of appropriation, but yeah, theoretically, this funding is for retiree health insurance, and it's not locked in for a certain period of time, so.
Yep.
Aaron?
No questions.
Ted?
What's it invested in?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I didn't bring it with me, but.
I'm just wondering.
I mean, it's a mix of securities investment. You look for a specific breakout in terms of like,
If it's a fund that's explicitly to cover healthcare, I wonder if we're supposed to like be long the companies that provide healthcare and profit when expenses go up.
that's a good point, yeah.
Like, buy insurance companies, buy the companies that make Ozempic, buy, you know what I mean? Like, maybe not 100% of it, but like that money goes somewhere when, you know, if our health insurance goes up because everybody's on GLPs, the providers of those GLPs are making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Head's on fire tonight.
Same thing with insurance, health insurance, all that stuff.
I mean, the only, I guess the question that makes sense, but can we even be that aggressive in the marketplace, or do we have controls in regards to our investments that would limit our ability to be able to?
Yeah, so we have an investment policy
Yeah, I'm
statement.
sure it wouldn't be
Yeah.
in policy on day
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
That'd be like export.
But there's no state limitations in regards to our ability to be able to invest that aggressively in that situation if we wanted to.
Yes, we would be able to.
Yeah, okay.
Wally?
So how much of both the investment into the OPEB and retirement would have contributed to our loss of credit rating?
We would have to,
Would it matter? I mean, I know you're talking about putting
Yeah.
a new town garage back on the wish list.
yeah.
And obviously, that's gonna be a major expense to want our credit rating back.
Yeah, I mentioned,
Still
yeah.
earning that back, is it?
The investment we'd have to make for them to view it as a significant investment would be reducing our pension fully funded date by several years and investing millions upon millions of dollars into our OPEB, which would be a dramatic impact on services. So I think unfortunately, the short-term answer is we're probably going to be, knock on wood, we'll be AA plus for the next few years until we get closer to retiring our pension liability and have a stronger foothold on our OPEB liability, unfortunately.
Or retiring some other debt?
Yeah.
Ted will do it. Thank you.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And that concludes
Ronnie, I
night
think
one.
you're going to need to patent that answer because that question's going to keep coming back up. What do we have to do to get our rating back?
Just before we close up, just so everybody does know, tomorrow night, the plan is for us to do.
Wednesday night.
Wednesday night is the plan for us to do, as one of those articles, the Essex VOTEC. There will be nobody here from Essex VOTEC. I'll be here to be able to answer anybody's questions that they have in regards to that. I know everybody got that very lengthy document with it in regards to the budget. I do hope that everybody also got that letter that I sent from DESE. And again, to the extent that DESE has authority over us is another question, but basically what DESE is telling us is that we as a community, both the Select Board and the Finance Committee, have no authority to be able to amend or change that number that is provided to us by the Regional School Board, and that number, as provided by the Regional School Board, is required to be forwarded to town meeting. And then town meeting, in turn, obviously has the authority to be able to vote up or down with that. So I would probably advise everyone as we move forward, if you are interested in following that DESE direction, which again is your own business, but we would simply on Wednesday night be expected to forward that number, even if we did have, I don't believe we do, but if we did have serious reservations with that number, we would be required to forward it to town meeting anyways, so.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, meeting adjourned. We'll see you all on Wednesday. There we go.
Thank you.
Wait, now I want to.
Is it gonna be a problem that Ted and I are?